Hello and welcome to another time of Bible teaching. Today we're looking at, when does the rapture happen? I mean, this is the question everybody wants to know. When is it going to happen so we can plan our lives accordingly? What does that mean? Well, not pay the mortgage, not pay the bills, take that last trip to Disneyland. Okay. Disney World, Disneyland. Okay. They're leaning the wrong way. We'll go to the beach. We'll go here. But we can do all these wonderful things before the rapture happens. So we don't have to worry about paying anybody. No, that's not it. I've had that feeling before, though. But no, the bottom line is, if you knew the rapture is coming, clock's ticking, running out of time, got to have Jesus, got to share Jesus. Nothing else matters. That's the urgency that we would have. Okay, hope that makes sense. The Bible does tell us when it's going to happen. Actually, we did a video recently, Amos 3:7, about how God, it's a verse that I always thought said that God does nothing without telling his prophets and servants first. And it says that God does nothing without telling his secrets. That word secrets is sewed. They're mysteries hidden in scripture, meant to come at another time. I think I found it last year. I'm not, or I should say it was given to me last year. I just had a year of Jubilee wrong. It's 50 years when it should be 49. I believe the rapture is in 2024. How do I word this? Am I 100% convinced that it has to happen in 2024? No, I'm looking for any Rosh Hashanah. And you'll see that as well today. So let's get into it. First, I want to look at a couple of idioms in the Bibles. Things that might not mean what you think. There's one that's off the top of my head. I'm not sure it is in Scripture. I'm not going to look. But do you know how Jesus told the guy that it's easier for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for, it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven? What's an eye of a needle? I mean, you think a needle, how do you get a camel through an eye of a needle? One hair at a time? No. The eye of the needle, they have gates all in Jerusalem. At night, they'd lock them up. Well, there was one gate that would have a little tiny gate in it, so that you'd have to almost like get down, humble yourself, get down, crawl through it. You're not going to get an army wearing armor through this tiny little gate. That little gate was called the eye of the needle. If you don't know that, you don't get it. Peter heard the crier cry 3 times, or the rooster crow 3 times. That's what you got from King James Bible. That got passed through to the other ones. The problem is that during feast days, roosters are unclean animals. Not that they're unclean as you can't eat them unclean, just they're filthy. They're not allowed in the city during the feast days because they crap everywhere. I know, I have chickens. That would be the crier, the person who 3 times gets up and says, "Hey guys, it's time to wake up." It's a person, not a bird. There are so many things that are just wrong. Jesus's father is a carpenter, right? No, that word means builders. They didn't really have carpenters back then. Everything was made out of stone. Wood was rare. But in England, when they made the King James Bible, everything was made out of wood. So the builder became a carpenter. He was probably a stonemason. So, and how do you know these things? You learn from people who know it. You dig in. You not only learn from them, but then you start researching it and check things out. So what I do is I hear these things. I'll look online, and I don't trust everything online because there's a lot of people who have no idea what they're talking about that are talking about it online. But then I also go to places like there's a neighborhood. We call it Little Israel, synagogue on every corner, where I have a lot of customers. And I'll ask questions. Actually, sometimes I can talk to them better about prophecy than I can Christians because they get all the Hebraic stuff. They understand the Old Testament. They don't believe who Jesus is. But people say, like, well, if Jesus was who you believe he is, that would make total sense. It's funny. It's a way of opening doors there. So let's get into a couple of these idioms and look at them. They're actually kind of interesting. So we're going to go to Matthew 6, and they're all in Matthew to make it easy. We're just going to look at 5. Matthew 6, verse 22. I'm sorry, verse 3. It says, "But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." What does that mean? How do you not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing? All right. There are 3 times in the year there are pilgrimage days, and actually they cover all the feast days, but they're when everybody has to come to Jerusalem. But it was said, don't come empty-handed. Bring something for the poor and the needy. So when he says, when Jesus said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. So not just bring 1 handful, bring 2 handfuls of stuff to the needy. Pretty simple. In Matthew 6, look at 22. One of my favorite ones. This passage blew me away for a while. The lamp of the body is the eye. Therefore, if your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that's in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? I didn't understand that for a long, long time until I realized that having a good eye is that you're able to see the needs of others around you and are willing to take care of them. So if you can see the needs of other people around you and are willing to meet those needs, that you have a good light. If you go through life going, me, 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 then you have a bad light within you because you don't care about others. And is this consistent with what's in the flow of what's said here? Look at verse 25. Therefore, it says no one can serve, 24. No one can serve 2 masters, either hate one or love the other, or will be loyal to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Okay. Therefore, so here's the culmination of it. I therefore say to you, do not worry about your life and what you will eat and what you will drink, nor about your body and what you will put on it. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? And then he talks about looking at the birds of the air, looking at the fields, how God takes care of them. What is the biggest reason that's going to stop you from going out to meet the needs of somebody else? I might need what I give them. You know, if I give them my food, what am I going to eat? If I give them my clothes, what am I going to wear? What's the biggest problem from going out and serving others? Hold on 1 second. Stop. No. Ow. Get. I have a 3-month-old black lab here with really, really sharp teeth. Part of the job description. But I'm going to keep going and ignore her. All right, next one. Let's go to Matthew 11, verse 29. These are idioms. That doesn't look right. That's Matthew 10. Matthew 11, 29. Oh, one more page. There we go. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. What's the yoke? Yeah, it's a big wooden thing you put over the oxen that holds it, and you holds the rope and keeps them to the cart or the plow or whatever when they're working the fields. Yeah. But the yoke is also an idiom for the law. Jesus is saying, take my law. What law is Jesus's law? Well, who wrote Torah? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word came down and made himself flesh. It was Jesus. So what is he actually saying here? It's one of the things that Jesus butted heads with Pharisees about over and over. Rabbinical law. The rabbis added layers and layers and layers of laws to keep you away from the laws that are in the Bible. Where there's 613 plus 10 laws in the Bible, the rabbis added on tens of thousands of other laws. They're called the fences. When he talked about, when the rabbis confronted Jesus because your disciples aren't washing your hands, they weren't worried about whether or not their hands were clean or not. It was a ceremony of hand washing with a little pitcher that has 2 handles. So you take one handle this way and then one handle this way. And that's what they're worried about. Is that in Scripture? No, but that was a rabbinical law. That's what Jesus is saying. Just do what's written in the Bible. Just follow my law. For my law is easy. All right, let's keep moving on. Let's go to Matthew 18. And again, you've got to know, I've got books on idioms. I have student. See, I'm a student of teachers who understand the Hebrew, who are experts in Hebrew, and they'll explain that as they go. I work with people, customers that are Orthodox Jews, and I ask them, you've got to do your homework. You got to do a Berean. I had a guy really upset. I'm saying, that doesn't mean what you think it means. That's an idiom. And he got all pissed off at me. I can't believe that God has a Bible that I can't read and understand just as it's written in English. Dude, this was written by man, translated by man. You've got to do your work. You can understand it, but you've got to work at it. You've got to be a Berean. If you're going to try to sit here and believe what's written in English, you got issues, seriously. And I had an argument about that with somebody. I'm trying to explain to him what the original language of a verse said. He said, well, didn't Jesus speak this in plain English right here? I said, no, Jesus never spoke English. He could not get that. All right, I'm getting on in a tangent. Let me keep going. Where are we headed to? Matthew 18. That's it. Surely I say to you, no, it's 18:8. My apologies. If your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is better to enter life lame and maimed rather than having 2 hands and 2 feet to be cast in the lake of fire. Is Jesus really saying that we need to cut off each other's hands and feet? Literally? No. If your hand causes you to sin, it's considered stealing. He's saying, stop it. If your foot is causing you to sin, it's trespassing, going places you shouldn't go. He's just saying, stop it. He's not saying cut off your hand and feet. No, that's not what Scripture is trying to tell you. Those are idioms. If Jesus really meant that anybody steals, you cut off a hand, nobody's going to have any hands left. All right, let's go to where from here? Matthew 24, verse 17. Let he who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. Okay, he's talking about, like when you see the abomination of desolation spoken about the prophet Daniel, run, get out of here. Is he saying don't go and gather your belongings? No, it's more important. He's saying don't go down into the streets. See, all the housetops back in that day, you could jump from one house up to another, to another, to another, and get out of the city without ever putting a foot on the ground. That's what he's saying. That's the urgency in which they will be leaving the town when, and this is just before the middle of tribulation with the battle of Gog and Magog, when they're coming, and it's, oh my goodness, we need to get out of town quick, and they're heading to Petra. Is that all that I have here? Yeah, that's all I've got here. So let's go and look at the time of the rapture. That's what you want to know, right? That's why you clicked on the video. What time does the rapture happen? Let's schedule it for 4:23 on. No, we don't schedule it. God tells us. So we're going to go to 1 Corinthians 15:51 and see what Paul had to tell us. And this is a scripture that is a basic fundamental scripture about the rapture in prophecy that everybody gets wrong. Again, you got to know the idioms. If you don't know the idioms, what do you end up sounding like? An idiot. I mean, I don't mean to be rude or whatever, but seriously, if you don't get an idiot, if you don't get an idiom, you look like an idiot. Think about how my friend felt, or how people thought about him when he went back in the 1980s and said, hey, do you know where I can buy some fags? Into a bar in a really seedy part of New York City. Same thing's true in prophecy. People can get on their soapboxes and go on and on about stuff and not understand the idioms. It's crazy. 15:51. For behold, I tell you a mystery. Okay. That's a sod. That's something that was hidden in Scripture that was never brought out of Scripture until now. Did Jesus talk about the rapture? Nope. Otherwise, Paul wouldn't be telling us a mystery, a sod. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. Yeah, this is the rapture. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. So he gives you, tells you that the rapture happens in a twinkling of an eye at the last trump. He just gave you the day and the hour. The last trump is Rosh Hashanah. 100 blows of the shofar that day, 9 sets of 11, and one last trump. A lot of mid-tribbers say, nope, that's the last trump in Yom Kippur. Or excuse me, that's the last trump in the trumpet judgments, which were written at least 30 years later than what this was written. No, it's a Jewish idiom. My customers get it still to this day. It's huge. That's the awakening blast. That's when you see in Isaiah 26 where it says, awake and sing. What are we going to be singing? A new song. So many places, your dead will rise from the dust. Awake. It's the awakening blast. That's the last trumpet on Rosh Hashanah. That's the day. Well, they don't know the actual day because there's a lot involved with knowing the day. It's not only knowing like when the new moon is, but it's also knowing when does the month start, because the calendars are kind of weird. And most people following prophecy have no idea what I'm about to say. You got to make sure the barley is Aviv so you know when to start the first month in the spring. All right. So that's the last trump. But a twinkling of an eye is also an idiom. It's evening twilight when two stars are visible. This is when you change the day. Okay, the day starts at night, but Rome changed it. So our day starts at midnight. So now, if I'm right, that this twinkling of an eye, the time of the rapture happens at evening twilight, there would be another place in Scripture where you'd find it, right? Well, there is. Let's go back to Matthew into 25. And we're going to look at the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 are wise, 5 are foolish. This parable, obviously, the groom is Christ. The whole story of the wedding feast is the story of Christ in his first and second coming. If you don't get the wedding feast, you don't get Scripture. Seriously, at least when it comes to prophecy. See, the bride is the church, but also these 10 virgins are also the church. Parables are not perfect picture stories. They're picture stories, though, and they're meant to convey things. It doesn't mean that it perfectly happens that way. But in here, where is it we want to get to? Matthew 25:6. I'm talking and not turning. I do that. 25:6. It tells you the time. And at midnight, a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out and meet him. But wait, that's midnight. That's not evening twilight. Yes, it is. See, there's so many people, King James Version only. They think it's so perfect. It's not. First of all, King James changed the name, Jacoba, to James. Why? Because King James wanted his name in the Bible, so he got a book, the book of James. His name was Jacob. Second, I mean, there's so many different things in there. What else? Roosters. Roosters were not allowed in the city during feast days. So there was not a rooster that crowed 3 times. That would be the crier at the temple who gets out and 3 times tells everybody to wake up. You know, he locks up the door of the temple, goes to sleep right there, puts the key underneath one of the stones and pulls out his mat and goes to sleep right there, wakes up at sunset and cries out 3 times to everybody saying, wake up, it's time to start your day. Yeah, chickens were not allowed in the city on those days because they're unclean. Not that they are biblically unclean, they're just unclean. I know, I have 50 of them out back. They're unclean. I wouldn't tell them that. They lay eggs and I eat the eggs, so I don't want to upset them. There are so many little things like that. Jesus is a carpenter. No, he was not. His dad was not a carpenter. They don't even have trees in Israel, really. What is everybody say? Everything made out of? Stone. He was a stonemason. Anyhow, let's get back to here. So this is not midnight. Look up the word. It's midst. And I actually have crossed out in my Bible, crossed out midnight and wrote midst in there. Midst, in between, in the middle of, between two things. Between the day and the night. That would be evening twilight when two stars of medium strength are visible. It's the same thing. That's when the rapture happens. And I believe it's in 2024 on Rosh Hashanah. But I would be ready for any Rosh Hashanah. I'm not saying 100% that God didn't show up in a vision or a burning tree or whatever. Actually, if he did, I'd question it. Seriously, I would, because I know that Satan. I've seen a lot of dreams and a lot of stuff, visions that people have had that haven't come true, but they were so sure that God gave it to them. I question them. I do. Sorry, I've been doing this too long, seen too many things. Anyhow, thank you for following this. Thank you. Subscribe, pass it on. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.